From the outside, this looked like paradise. Blue water, private beaches, luxury villas, a place where nothing bad was supposed to happen. But this wasn't paradise. It was a crime scene. And for years, everyone pretended not to see it. Private planes landed here. Powerful men arrived. Money erased consequences. And the people who could have stopped it didn't. This is where the Epstein story really begins. Not with a crime, but with protection. Tonight we uncover how Jeffrey Epstein didn't survive by hiding. He survived because the system chose not to look. I'm Masood. Welcome to Real America Files. The timeline starts in Palm Beach, Florida, 2005. According to police records, a local mother walks into the Palm Beach Police Department. She isn't panicked. She isn't confused. She's precise. Her daughter is 14. She describes being taken to a mansion, cash payments, a so-called massage, then instructions to bring other girls. Detectives don't dismiss her. They listen. They document. They begin interviewing witnesses. What they find isn't random, it's a pattern. Police filings show multiple minors describing the same house, the same routine, the same payments, the same escalation. By early 2006, Palm Beach police have identified more than 30 potential victims. Not rumors, statements. Under Florida law, the recommended charges are severe. Multiple felony counts, potential life exposure. This should have been straightforward. It wasn't. According to court records, the case never reaches state prosecutors. Instead, it's transferred, quietly, from local authorities to federal prosecutors in the Southern District of Florida. That transfer matters, because once it enters the federal system, everything slows down. Emails later obtained by investigators show months of private discussions. No public hearings, no courtroom arguments, no victims present. Behind closed doors, a deal is negotiated. A non-prosecution agreement. Epstein pleads guilty to a single state-level charge, solicitation, 18 months. He serves 13, work release, 6 days a week, up to 12 hours outside jail each day. Florida law allows work release, but only with explicit approval. Approval was granted. Victims were never informed. According to a later Department of Justice review, this violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act, a federal law passed in 2004. The law is clear. Victims have the right to be notified, the right to be heard. Those rights were denied, and buried inside the agreement was something even more powerful: immunity, not just for Epstein, but for unnamed co-conspirators. That clause erased an entire network before it could be charged. For the next decade, Epstein expands. New York, New Mexico, the U.S. Virgin Islands. Flight logs show repeated travel. Financial records confirm millions moving through layered accounts. Nothing is hidden. Nothing is stopped. Because influence doesn't leave fingerprints. This wasn't a failure of evidence. It was a failure of will. And once protection is written into the system, justice doesn't disappear. It's redesigned. Part 2 follows the deal itself. How it was engineered, who approved it, and why no one was held accountable. The deal didn't just reduce a sentence, it rewrote reality. After 2006, Jeffrey Epstein wasn't treated like a suspect. He was treated like a problem already solved. According to federal court records, the non-prosecution agreement didn't just protect Epstein, it bound the government. U.S. attorneys agreed not to pursue federal charges. Not now, not later, not ever, even if new victims came forward. That clause mattered because victims did come forward, dozens of them, but the door was already closed. Under the agreement, Epstein's immunity extended beyond Florida. It followed him across jurisdictions. State law stopped, federal law stepped back, and the system called it legal. The victims didn't know. According to sworn affidavits, many continued cooperating with investigators, believing prosecution was still coming. It wasn't. Behind the scenes, prosecutors exchanged emails. Defense attorneys drafted language. Timelines were adjusted. According to later DOJ findings, this process violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act, a federal statute passed in 2004. The law required notification, participation, voice. None of that happened, and that silence wasn't accidental. Internal communications showed deliberate delay. Victims were kept uninformed until after the deal was signed. By the time they found out, there was nothing left to challenge. The agreement was sealed, literally, filed in a way that prevented public access, prevented judicial review, prevented scrutiny. Even judges weren't fully aware of its scope. That's how rare this was. Former federal prosecutors later described it as extraordinary, not generous. Not lenient, extraordinary, because it created a legal shield no ordinary defendant could access, and Epstein knew it. After sentencing, he didn't disappear, he expanded. Financial records show millions moved through his accounts after 2008. Properties acquired, trusts, restructured, assets, insulated, flight logs continued, visitors continued, recruitment continued, civil lawsuits later described the same pattern repeating, same methods, same payments, same control. But criminal accountability was gone because the system had already decided. The most dangerous part wasn't the deal itself, it was the precedent. This case showed that wealth could negotiate immunity, that influence could override process, that federal power could be neutralized quietly. No vote, no hearing, no public debate, just signatures. And once that line was crossed, everything that followed became harder to stop. In the next phase, journalists step in where prosecutors didn't. Records are unsealed. Depositions are taken, patterns emerge, but by then, the damage is structural. Part 3 follows the money, the network, and the paper trail that almost exposed everything, before the system closed ranks again. By the time Epstein's protection became visible, it was already institutional. This wasn't one deal, it was a system response. After the 2008 non-prosecution agreement, federal agencies didn't re-examine the case, they deferred. According to internal Department of Justice correspondence, later obtained through court filings, prosecutors were instructed to treat the matter as resolved. That word mattered, because resolved didn't mean justice, it meant closure. No follow-up interviews, no financial audits, no expanded victim outreach. The case file went quiet, but Epstein didn't. Flight logs from this period show continued private travel. New York, the Virgin Islands, international routes, money moved through layered accounts, trusts, shell entities. According to banking records cited in civil litigation, payments continued to flow to intermediaries tied to recruitment and logistics. The operation never stopped, it adapted. Victims who attempted to report abuse after 2008 were told the case was over. Police referrals led nowhere. Federal offices declined jurisdiction. One former victim later testified that she was advised not to pursue it further. The message was consistent. The system was done. This is where the failure deepened, because federal law didn't require silence. The Crime Victims' Rights Act was still in force. Victims still had standing. New crimes still constituted new jurisdiction. But prosecutors treated Epstein as a closed chapter. Why? Court records point to risk. Reopening the case meant explaining the deal, explaining the immunity, explaining why co-conspirators were never named. According to later DOJ reviews, officials feared that revisiting the agreement could expose internal misconduct. So they chose containment. Containment protected institutions, not victims. Meanwhile, Epstein's influence expanded. According to property filings, his Virgin Islands compound was developed further after 2008. New structures, expanded security, restricted access. The island became harder to monitor, and federal oversight didn't follow. Local authorities deferred to federal jurisdiction. Federal agencies deferred to prior agreements. Jurisdiction became a loop. No one owned the problem. This vacuum created cover. According to sworn testimony in later civil cases, recruitment continued using the same methods: cash payments, referrals, silence enforced through dependents. The pattern never changed, only the confidence did. Epstein no longer acted like someone avoiding detection. He acted like someone immune. That confidence mattered, because power isn't just protection, it's signaling. When powerful systems stand down, predators notice, and others learn. This wasn't negligence. It was normalization, a decision repeated across offices, across years, across administrations. By the time investigative journalists reopened the case publicly, the damage was layered, evidence had aged, memories faded, records were incomplete, and accountability had a new enemy: time. Part 4 follows the pressure point. The moment silence began to crack, and the system realized containment was no longer possible. By the time the pressure started building, the system was already defending itself, not Epstein. The decisions. Court records show that after the 2008 non-prosecution agreement, federal oversight didn't increase, it vanished. No monitoring, no compliance checks, no follow-up investigations. According to Department of Justice internal emails later obtained through litigation, prosecutors considered the case resolved. That word mattered, because once a case is labeled resolved, reopening it becomes politically dangerous. Epstein understood that. So did the people around him. For years after his release, Epstein operated openly. He registered as a sex offender, but enforcement was minimal. Florida law required address reporting, travel disclosure, restrictions on contact. Records show repeated violations, private flights, unreported residences, unsupervised access to young women. No arrests followed. Local agencies deferred to federal authority. Federal agencies deferred to jurisdictional limits. Everyone waited for someone else to act. Meanwhile, the victims kept trying. Civil lawsuits were filed. Freedom of information requests submitted. Journalists pushed for records. Most were denied. Documents were sealed. Depositions blocked. Names redacted. According to federal court transcripts, judges repeatedly cited national interest and ongoing sensitivity. Sensitivity to whom? The pressure didn't come from law enforcement. It came from exposure. In 2018, investigative reporting reopened the case publicly, not with rumors, with documents, flight logs, internal emails, victim testimony. The story wasn't that Epstein committed crimes. That was already known. The story was that the system helped him survive them. Public outrage followed. Prosecutors were questioned. Officials were called to testify. Old decisions were re-examined, but accountability still stopped short. No charges for the deal. No indictments for concealment. No consequences for violating victim rights. According to DOJ policy reviews, failures were described as errors in judgment, not misconduct. That distinction protected careers. As pressure mounted, Epstein's circle tightened. Financial transfers increased. Trusts were reorganized. Legal protections expanded. Estate planning accelerated. He was preparing for something. In July 2019, federal agents arrested Epstein in New York. This time, the charges were federal: sex trafficking of minors, conspiracy. No immunity, no sealed deal. The system finally moved. But it moved too late, because pressure doesn't just force action, it forces risk. Inside the jail, safeguards failed, protocols broke, oversight collapsed. According to Inspector General findings, guards missed required checks, logs were falsified, cameras malfunctioned, every layer failed at once. And that convergence mattered, because the moment Epstein died, the focus shifted from network to procedure, from who benefited to how he died. That pivot protected everyone else. The case narrowed, the scope shrank. The pressure redirected, and the central question remained unanswered. Who else was protected? Part 5 closes the file and reveals what the system chose not to pursue. By the time the world finally paid attention, the system had already made its choice. Not to expose, not to confront, but to contain. Jeffrey Epstein didn't die with answers. He died with questions locked behind procedure. After his death in August 2019, federal prosecutors faced a moment of rare leverage. Flight logs existed, financial records existed, sworn testimony existed. According to court filings, investigators had evidence of coordinated activity, recruitment patterns, payment trails, repeated travel by the same names. But no conspiracy case was filed, no enterprise charges, no racketeering indictments, because criminal law demands proof of intent, and intent is the one thing power never writes down. Instead, the system chose the quieter path: civil settlements. According to probate records, Epstein's estate paid more than $120 million to resolve claims. No admissions, no trials, no cross-examination. Victims were compensated, but truth was negotiated away. At the same time, criminal accountability stalled. Grand jury materials remained sealed. Under federal law, those records can stay secret indefinitely unless a judge orders release. No judge did. The most visible failure wasn't Epstein, it was everything around him. Video cameras that malfunctioned, jail logs that were falsified, guards who violated protocol. According to the Department of Justice Inspector General, required checks were skipped, records were altered after the fact. Multiple safeguards failed at once. No one went to prison for that failure. Administrative discipline replaced accountability. Early retirements replaced consequences. The system absorbed the damage, and then it moved on. But the impact didn't stop. The Epstein case reshaped how prosecutors handle powerful defendants. It revealed how plea agreements can erase entire networks, how victim rights laws can be bypassed, how silence can be legally purchased. Federal policy reviews now cite the case as a failure of oversight, not morality, oversight, because morality would require judgment. Oversight only requires procedure. And procedure can always find a way to justify itself. The most dangerous lesson wasn't that a predator existed, it was that protection can be engineered through jurisdiction, through discretion, through delay, different name, different city, same structure. The question people still ask is simple: who else was involved? But that question misunderstands the ending. The Epstein case was never about a list. It was about a system that knew, a system that negotiated, a system that decided exposure was more dangerous than accountability. Epstein didn't create that system. He tested it, and it worked. Until the law stops protecting power with silence, the next file won't look like a scandal. It will look like routine, and by the time anyone notices, the damage will already be complete.